I always say hope is the consequence of action. So if you are feeling hopeless, you can't wait for hope to come to you in order to do something. You actually have to do something to give yourself hope. And once that wheel starts going, you will be more hopeful every day.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. What if the only way to save the planet was to kidnap the world's billionaires and dose them with psychedelics? That's not a joke. That's Diana Colleen's debut novel. But here's what makes it more than just a wild premise. Diana is a trained psychedelic facilitator. She's lived through the kind of trauma these medicines are designed to help heal, and she genuinely believes billionaireism is a pathology, not a success story. This conversation goes deep into the medicine, the inequality, and the hope she refuses to let go of. Diana Colleen, thank you so much for being here today on A Joyful Rebellion.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here, and I want to know, what is speculative fiction? I've heard about fiction. I've heard about different kinds of fiction. I've never heard about this one. So it sounds interesting.
Well, it's kind of an umbrella term, really. So like science fiction and fantasy is under the umbrella of speculative fiction. But
Okay.
and so dystopian, cli-fi is also under that. So it's basically anything that has a what if question that is answered in the book.
And you write speculative fiction. That's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about your new book and the kind of the implications of the what if, because that's the cool part. Like, what if? And it's about a subject matter that I think everyone listening has been exposed to, especially in the last 10 years, because this group of people that you talk about in the book, they've gotten more and more, I guess, prominent. There are more of them than there were 10 years ago. And they are in the news a lot because the society as a whole sort of treats them as a villain, and the other half treats them as a celebrity. And we're talking about billionaires here. So I want you to walk me through what it was that you saw that made you think, you know what, this could be a book. And this book could take a really interesting spin, and we could really make something of this. So tell me the first time you got this idea for the book.
Well, I am not one of those people who have dreamed about writing a book my whole life. Like, it has never been on my radar to write a book. But after I went through a very dark period in my life, I was taught meditation, and meditation has kind of helped keep me alive. And about 5 years ago in meditation, this idea, this fully formed concept of an idea for a book came to me in meditation. I'm like, well, it sounds like a great movie. It sounds like a great book. What am I supposed to do with this? And I kind of ignored it for a while, but it kept coming back again and again and again. And at that time, I was in a job that I really was unhappy in. And my partner, who's now my husband, I had told him about this idea, and he saw how unhappy I was. And he said, I can support you. So if you want to quit your job and write this book, I will support you in that. And wow, that was a tough thing for me, because I'm very, very independent. I've never really relied on anyone else in my life. I started working when I was 11 years old. So I've always provided for myself. So trusting somebody else to actually provide for me and support me was a big leap of faith for me. But I was so unhappy, and I did trust my partner. I quit my job and I sat at my desk for basically 4 years, like 10 hours a day, learning the craft of writing, learning the industry, and actually writing this book. And I never really suffered from writer's block because whenever the ideas stopped coming, I would meditate. And what happened next came to me in meditation. I kind of almost feel like it was divinely inspired. At first, I was like telling the universe, you have the wrong person. I'm not a writer. But now I identify as a writer. That's what I do with my life every day. I am at my desk writing something every day.
That's fantastic. And I love the cover. I'm on your website right now. It's dianacolleenauthor.com. And anybody listening, the cover's super cool, but the whole premise is wildly interesting because I read a stat the other day and this blew my mind. It said, imagine that you're immortal and it's 80,000 BC. So we're talking 82,000 years ago and some change. And it said, you decide to start saving $10,000 a day for all of those years, and you never spend a single dime. And now it's 2016. You're 82,000 years old. You saved $10,000 every single day. You still don't have as much money as the world's top billionaire.
Right.
I'm not a math person, but when they put the math in a little story like that, I was like, huh, okay, really? Because $10,000 a day seems like mind-blowing money as it is just to go through a year. But that's for 82,000 years.
Right.
It still don't have that amount of money. And when you put it in a perspective like that, it really makes you think like, whoa, okay. That is more than I can comprehend. But in your story, you posit that maybe billionaireism is more like a disease. It's more like a mental illness. And I want to also talk about meditation for a second, because we do talk, a lot of people I talk to on this show, they had something that happened in their lives, maybe happened to their lives, and they had to figure out how to cope. And a lot of people that I talk to have gone to breath work. They've gone to meditation. They've gone to some of those things where they go inside of themselves. And I can only imagine how frustrating it was for you, because I meditate every morning, and for you to be trying to meditate, you know, you're trying to clear your mind and these ideas start coming in. You're like, no, dude, cool idea. I'm trying to clear my mind. I'm trying to like just focus on my breath right now. And you've got these great ideas and you're like, no, that's actually cool. I'm going to write that down. Hold on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be completely annoying and also awesome at the same time. And that's basically meditation in a nutshell. It is a constant struggle. So good.
Yeah.
Good for you for doing that. And it bore some fruit. But let's get back to the billionaires. Tell me about your relationship to the lore of billionaires.
I grew up very poor. So, like I said, I've been working since I was 11 years old, and I'm very smart. So, throughout school, I was always getting straight A's, even though I was working. And then when it came to getting scholarships, I didn't get scholarships because I wasn't involved in the community. I wasn't doing the extracurricular things that the other students were doing because I had to work. I felt that inequality from a very young age. I've always seen how unfair the world is. And my mom always said, well, Diana, life isn't fair. And my response, even as a child, was, well, if it can be, why isn't it? And I have lived with that in my soul since I was a child. And then, you know, when we see this explosion of billionaireism and the suffering of the people, like the suffering has increased with the billionaireism increasing. that's where I come from every day of my life, is trying to figure out a way to alleviate suffering in the world. But when I first started writing, I was firmly in the camp of that billionaires are villains. So, like you said, I think there are two camps, the villains and the heroes. I was firmly in the villains camp. And then I started writing, and I realized that they're human beings and that nobody really gets through life without some kind of trauma. And our traumas and everything that happens to us in our life creates our personality, creates who we are, creates what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about the world. As I was writing it, I was like, these people are human beings, but they have a mental illness. So when we see the show Hoarders on TV, we can see that that is definitely a mental illness that affects that person and it affects their family. But it doesn't typically spill out into society. It really just affects a small group of people. But with billionaireism, their mental illness is affecting every single person on the planet and the planet itself. I want people to start using that word, billionaireism. It's a pathology. It's not success. Like we frame it as success, but it's actually pathology.
That's a really interesting way to put it, because no one ends up a billionaire by accident, do they?
Right.
No one just
Right.
stumbles into, oh, God. I mean, you might have a billionaire who passes on their fortune to their family, and then that could create a billionaire. The Waltons would be a good example of that,
Yeah.
where there's enough money to go around that even all the kids can now be billionaires after the person who created the wealth passes on. I'm guessing you've done a lot of research about maybe the differences between people who have gotten their billions from a legacy, like maybe the Rockefellers, maybe the Waltons, and then you've got the new money billionaires. Did you get a sense of the difference between those two cultures? Because if you've had billions for a generation or more, you're going to live a little different than if you've had billions for the last 20 years. Like our most decorated billionaire wasn't a billionaire 20 years ago. That's bizarre to me. That's a really quick ramp up.
Right.
But have you seen a difference?
I actually haven't really looked into that. I don't really see a difference in the way that they use their wealth, I guess. I just don't see that anyone who has more than $1 billion is a moral person. It doesn't matter where that money came from. If you have $1 billion and you're not helping the suffering, and it's not just like token helping. That's not what I'm talking about. People always like to point to Taylor Swift and Oprah as the good billionaires. Yes, they do some really fantastic things with their money, but they still have billions of dollars. When their philanthropy, yes, it does good stuff, but those people are getting tax breaks on their philanthropy. They're actually still making more money by, like, they can borrow money at like 3% and then invest it and make 20%. So their wealth just keeps increasing and increasing, even as they're giving money away. So really the only person I can point to who is really actively trying to do the most good with her money is Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos's ex-wife. She is trying really hard to give away her money. And she's the only one who's trying that hard. You know, like Elon Musk, he has a foundation that's supposed to do all these amazing things. And they have tons and tons of money, and they only spend 5% of it a year. What? Like, what's the point in having a foundation if you're not even spending the money that you have for the things that you say you value? I don't understand that.
That's a good point. So when you started into this narrative that came to you through a meditation, where did you start? Where did you start with the concept of billionaireism and the things that happen next. And of course, we're not going to give away the book, but we're going to talk about there are a lot of little different ins and outs in the book. I mean, this is a story. It's not just a critique on people being billionaires, and things happen to billionaires. And then it brings in a whole nother angle from some of your past experiences with psychedelics. So talk about that, how those things collide.
Right. Yeah. My introduction to psychedelic assisted therapy was in 2018. My life growing up, I suffered a ton of trauma. I mean, like molestation, poverty, abandonment, the works. I had a very traumatic childhood and upbringing. And I stuffed everything down and put on a brave face, kind of made it through life. I was just existing. And in 2018, everything bubbled up and I didn't want to be here anymore. And I had tried other therapies, talk therapy, EMDR, pharmaceuticals, antidepressants. Nothing worked for me. And at that point in 2018, I knew that I needed real help that was different. And I'd heard about psychedelic assisted therapy, I'd read up on it. And because it's illegal, it's really hard, especially back then, it was really hard to find a practitioner. So I went to a plant medicine meetup and I met somebody who was actually having this type of therapy, and he referred me to his therapist. He couldn't get me in for 6 months. And I told him, well, I'm not going to be here in 6 months. So he referred me to somebody that he was training who was able to get me in right away. And I 100% believe that she and the therapy saved my life. And since then, I've continued to work with the medicines myself, and I've trained as a facilitator. So I understand how these medicines work with trauma. And when the concept of the book came, I was like, well, I know that these medicines break down people's egos so that you can see kind of why you are the way you are, how you became that way, and maybe see your life through a different lens. And these medicines also connect you to, I say, three things. I think that the world, humanity, is suffering from disconnection. We're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from the rest of humanity, and we're disconnected from nature. And I think that disconnection has created most of the problems that we see in the world, really. If we could solve the disconnection problem, we could solve all of our problems. These medicines connect you to those things. I was like, well, if billionaires could experience that connection, because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So that's where the psychedelic therapy came into play with Billionaires.
And I hear you with the therapy, I hear you calling it medicine. And if I were a billionaire, I would know that I can't patent something that's natural. So I'm going to try to lobby whatever lawmakers I can to make sure that option is not around for people. They need to buy my shiny little pill. And that shiny little pill will take care of part of the problem for the rest of your life. If you take 2 of these a day and call your doctor for a re-up on your prescription on a regular basis. Yeah, there's so many examples of times when a powerful either business or person has lobbied to keep things away from the public that would do them great benefit so that they can profit from just a different version of it. I've seen this in my own experience where I had a family member starting a business and they just got squashed. They had a great concept, but it threatened the old way of doing business that had already been established for generations. And these really powerful people were not going to let that happen, even though it would have been so environmentally friendly. It would have essentially taken, the whole concept was, instead of throwing away our garbage and having our garbage and our recycling in 2 different buckets and then sending them different places, we send them all to the same place. We sort out the stuff that we can reuse. We take the stuff we can't reuse, turn it into energy. And then we go back into existing landfills and we mine them just like they were a coal mine. And we run them through that same technology. And again, extract the things we can reuse, turn the stuff we can't into energy. Then all the people who there are so many landfills, and that's how that business model works. They own the landfill. They charge the cities and the counties to come put trash there. If landfills go away, so does their money. They just put a big squash on it. So when it comes to things like that, what kind of themes were you exploring with different billionaires? And there's no shortage of them to choose from now.
Yeah. So the book is really about solving climate change. It looks at how billionaires are working against each other for the same things. Like if you take space exploration, for example, there's at least 3 of them who have spent billions and billions of dollars trying to shoot their rockets into space. Why couldn't they have worked together and either saved a lot of money but had that collaboration instead of competition? They all want to be the guy who figures out space. But if they actually work together, we would have way fewer emissions. I mean, the emissions coming out of those rockets is insane, plus all the resources used to make them. But it also goes back to, like, why are we doing that in the first place? Why are we spending billions and billions of dollars on space exploration so that we can escape this beautiful planet with tons of resources when we've depleted it, instead of fixing this planet? Right? Like, I don't understand why we're not taking those billions of dollars and fixing this planet. But it goes back to what you were saying, and I see so much greenwashing going on. Like Amazon, for example, they had their climate pledge, I think it was in 2019, they said they would reduce their emissions by 40% by 2030, I think. Their emissions have gone up since that pledge, but everyone, oh, climate pledge. I live in Seattle. We have climate pledge arena. Everyone thinks, oh, green, they're trying so hard and their packaging is changing. And yeah, but their emissions are going up. So they're not actually doing all that they can do. And the money that corporation is making, why isn't that going back into solving climate change?
It's a good question. It's interesting because every billionaire makes money somehow, and it's all from us. Right?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
I am expecting one of those packages any moment myself, and now I feel a
Right.
little bad about it. So
I use it too.
thanks,
I
Diana.
mean,
Appreciate it.
my
No.
book is for sale on Amazon. Like,
Yeah.
I have to promote my book on Amazon, and I feel like such a hypocrite when I do this.
Isn't that the way, though? There's that dance between, okay, how am I contributing to the problem? And is it really just me? Because there are so many people on this planet. Like, I think it was 1960 is when the Earth crossed the threshold of having 1 billion people on it as
Really?
population. And now we're pushing 8
8?
billion.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been getting
Yeah.
busy. And it's funny because, when you talk about the difference between a million, it used to be millionaire.
Right.
And that was the thing you wanted to be.
Right.
And now a millionaire is like, you got one of those
You
on every
have to have
block.
$1 million. Yeah, you're poor if you don't have $1 million.
Yeah. For perspective, for people listening, 1 million seconds, Diana, how long is 1 million seconds in
11
days?
days. Yeah,
Okay.
11 days.
Now, you figure, okay, if 1 million seconds is 11 days, and 11 days, you add a couple of zeros to that and make 1 billion. This is like a couple years, right? Maybe.
You would think.
How many years is 1 billion seconds?
Almost 32 years. And so if you take that and you think about Elon Musk, who's projected to be a trillionaire, 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years.
Is that all? Oh my. Oh my. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right?
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
people's brains have a hard time conceptualizing large numbers and what the difference actually means. So yeah, a billion is very different than a million. People are always commenting, well, where's the line? Where do you draw the line between who's rich and who's obscenely rich? Like,
yeah.
why not $1 million? Why not 10 million? And I always come back to that time thing. Like it really opens people's eyes to the difference.
No joke. And I hate to get into the weeds, but there's having $1 billion, and then there's being worth $1 billion, because those aren't necessarily the same things. Like you could have a net worth,
Right.
but having cash in the bank to be able to spend is a little bit different. And sometimes you hear these huge numbers, and that might be wrapped up in so many things that they literally couldn't liquidate uh, quickly and be able to give that away. But tell
Right.
me where your story goes. I want to get back to the story. So tell me where the story goes. What happens to these billionaires? What happens with the medicine? What happens in general? Because I want to get people interested in getting this book, and
Yeah.
I want to dive into it.
There's a sisterhood of women psychedelic therapists who have some very powerful allies who are very wealthy, and they build this hidden facility in the middle of the prairies in Saskatchewan. And then they have a technology that doesn't exist right now. That's why it's speculative fiction. There's technology that may exist in a few years. They use that technology to kidnap billionaires. And they bring them to this facility, and they're not forced into the psychedelic therapy, because if you force somebody, it's not going to end well. You basically have to consent. So there's a whole part of the book about getting consent for this. But eventually they do partake in meditation practices, breathing exercises and things, and then they get into the psychedelic therapy. So the book describes their trips and how it affects their thinking and how it affects their behavior in the world. So it really shines a light on why they are the way they are and the damage that they've done to humanity. And it really wakes them up. The goal of the women is to get these men, who some of them hate each other going into this, to get them to work together to solve climate change.
You just hit on something a little earlier that the psychedelic therapy does, which is it takes away the ego.
Mhm.
And if there's anything you could see just on the surface, if you look at the news or social media, billionaires tend to have those. Like there's no
Yeah.
shortage of ego in the billionaire world.
Right.
And of course
Right.
I'm making a caricature of them in general. I'm generalizing because some maybe don't, as or some may be able to mask it a little bit better.
Mm.
That might be the better way to say it. But if you've gotten to that level in financial success, you're probably going to, you probably have to. It's
Mhm.
an absolute necessity. But wow, we've seen some crazy fragile ones lately over the last couple of years anyway. And they might be huge, but they are
Mhm.
made of very thin glass, and they can be
Yes.
shattered quickly. So when you were trying to write these billionaires, were you were trying to get into their heads and
Mhm.
try to figure out how to put words on the page to describe what was going on in their heads? What was that process like for you?
It was actually a lot of fun. Like, writing the trips was the most fun of the whole book, trying to describe something that's indescribable. Trying to explain to somebody who's never had a psychedelic experience what it would actually feel like and what you might actually think or feel during that, and trying to put that onto paper in a way that makes sense for somebody reading it was really hard, but it was a lot of fun. But as far as, like, getting into the billionaires' heads, I have some background in psychology and sociology, so I understand kind of how the brain works, how personalities are developed, and what possibly might have happened in childhood to bring on certain attributes in a personality. So I went back to that training to come up with possible traumas that these people have suffered to make them who they are.
Mm. And when it comes to the book, you've got several different themes coming together. You got the theme of saving the environment. You got the theme of the billionaires as a mental illness. But if I'm reading into it, there's also a theme of maybe some advocacy for the psychedelic therapies, because it's something it's something you personally have benefited from. Like you said, you wouldn't likely be here without it. Yet, as far as I know, in 2026, it still remains a very shaky legal ground to be able to pursue something that could change your life. So what's that landscape look like, fast forwarding from 2018 when you were the benefit of it?
It's definitely opening up a lot more. So it's much easier to find a practitioner these days, especially somewhere like Seattle, where it's decriminalized. So it's still not legal, but it's decriminalized. They're not going to bang on somebody's door and say, "Hey, you've got mushrooms in there." You know? So like the person that I trained under actually has a website where you can go, and she lists practitioners. You can contact them through her website. It is getting much easier. And the research has started again. The reason that these drugs were scheduled in the first place. So they're Schedule 1 drugs, which means that it is very, very, very difficult to even do research on them. The reason they were scheduled was during the Vietnam War with Nixon. He saw the counterculture, the hippies, talking about war is bad and they're all about love and war is bad. He saw that and he was like, we got to shut this down. And he scheduled the drugs to make them illegal, and you couldn't research them at all. Lately, they are allowed to do more research on them. So like the VA is in a clinical trial right now with MDMA for PTSD. All of the research shows that MDMA is one of the best tools for helping PTSD. And then with addiction, there's so much research with like ibogaine, MDMA, psilocybin with addiction. If you think about our homeless population, a lot of them are war veterans and a lot of them are addicts. So can you imagine what difference it would make if those people had access to this therapy? Like it would change society. It needs to be legalized, but there are so many hurdles for it to become legal. MDMA was in front of the FDA in the summer of 2024, I think, and they decided not to legalize it for a couple of reasons, but one of the big ones is you can't have a control group. Usually when there's a drug being researched, you've got a group that gets the placebo and a group that gets the drug. With psychedelics, you know if you've taken a psychedelic and you know if you haven't.
Okay, got it.
So you can't have the control group.
Yeah.
And then there's also the aspect of the therapist themselves. Obviously, you're going to have different results with different therapists, depending on their skill and their knowledge and how their bedside manner really. It's really difficult to standardize it. That's another reason why it's held up.
Is there a country or a group of countries where this is just normal, like a Tuesday, you can go do it and there is not a big deal there?
I believe Australia legalized, I want to say MDMA 2023. There's been several countries that are legalizing psilocybin. I want to say New Zealand and Poland.
And all of these are derived from a mushroom? Is that the deal?
No,
okay. I don't know
psilocybin.
psychedelics from a I'm clueless. Educate me.
Psilocybin is the compound in magic mushrooms.
Okay.
So when I talk about psilocybin, we're talking mushrooms. MDMA is actually a chemical, so it's not a natural substance. It's kind of like an LSD type drug.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. Okay. I remember when I was a kid, people would joke about going to find magic mushrooms in this cow field near where I lived, and the only thought I had was like, okay, you're gonna pluck them out of the poo of the cow. That's bad enough. But then from what I understand about mushrooms, you'll either like hallucinate for a minute or you'll just die because some mushrooms are poisonous and I don't know the difference. So go have fun. Yeah, that's my entire experience with mushrooms and I wasn't even there. I just had the thought experiment of that sounds like a
Yeah.
terrible idea. But for people who know what they're doing and can be assisted and facilitated, it sounds like there's a lot more trials going on that aren't sponsored by any sort of government. And so it's almost like an underground movement is what it sounds like is happening.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely an underground movement, and that's part of what the people who are involved in this underground movement, we're afraid of, like what you were talking about before, like big pharma coming in and going, okay, we've synthesized psilocybin, we've put it into this little capsule. You can buy our capsule for $1,500, but you can't go out into the forest and pick a mushroom.
Yeah.
So that's our fear.
That
And
sounds
then
like
also,
America in a nutshell.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Yeah. And then all of these people who have been working in this space for years, there's no standardized training right now. I trained under somebody who is in Seattle, but you can go online and do like an online course and call yourself a psychedelic facilitator. There are no standards because it's
Yeah.
not,
It's not
legal.
a real thing yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Whoa.
have to be really careful about who you allow to facilitate for you. There are so many horror stories about, sexual assault while you're under the influence and all
Gee.
kinds of things. It's complicated. It's very complicated. But there are so many people who are so devoted to this and who know that it will change the world, and they are working so hard for this. And then when big pharma comes in, a lot of these people are going to be just discounted because they're woo woo, they're crystal loving, sage burning, but they're the ones who have done all the work.
Mm.
So it's not going to be easy.
Isn't it interesting when a government bans something that grows naturally out in the world? And I'm by no stretch am I a libertarian. I didn't even know what a libertarian was until I went to my state fair back in the like legit. I'm over 50. I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I just walked up to them and I was like, "What are you guys about?" And they were like, "Well, we just think people shouldn't steal from us and you shouldn't hurt other people and they shouldn't hurt you. And outside of that, let her rip." And I'm like, "Okay, what does that mean?" So like, well, we think people should use whatever drugs they want. You do whatever you want in your house and the government should leave you alone. And I'm like, that sounds amazing if everyone wasn't a complete idiot, but not everyone
Right.
is
Right.
on the up and up. And like a lot of people are complete idiots and ruin it for the rest of us. So,
That's
namely those
exactly
long
it.
hair hippie people who got really loud back in the 60s and 70s and pissed off Nixon. Now here we
Yeah.
are. But that was bound to happen. And then the government comes in and there'd been so much research on other natural plants that have medicinal properties for things like Parkinson's, beyond even just psychedelics. So have you talked to people who are maybe advocates for getting some of these things delisted as the class one? I mean, if it's something you can go out in the woods and you can find, to say you can't put it in you and just roll the dice, it's on you, whatever
Right.
happens.
It's like wearing a bike helmet when you're out cycling, right? Like if you're stupid enough not to wear a helmet and you fall and crack your head open, that's on
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And now the government is telling you have to. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not saying just do whatever, but also like government, like step off, just do your thing, protect the airspace or whatever you do, but maybe get out of the people trying to better themselves. Government's there to save people from themselves sometimes, but man, that's a little overstep. But I guess my question leading up to that, I went on a tirade. Sorry. I don't get political on this thing, but politically, I'm like, government, just move along. just don't get in my business. But advocacy folks, are you aware of, or have you been in contact with people who are trying to get this
Yeah,
rectified?
there's a large organization called MAPS, so it's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. So
Wow.
they
Okay.
are the ones they're the ones who have been doing the really heavy lifting trying to get all of this legalized.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they are, I mean, they're brave people because they're basically going up against just the establishment and the
Yeah.
institutions that have been in place for, gosh, what, 55, 60 years now,
Yeah.
with this
Yeah.
being classed back in the, what year did you say it was? Like,
With Nixon?
yeah, Nixon would have been like
In the 60s.
60s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
and then Reagan, we had the war on drugs.
yeah, we
I'm a
did.
child of the 80s. I remember the
Yeah.
egg in the frying pan, and I was terrified of all drugs. Like, I
Uh-huh.
did not touch drugs my entire life. I was in middle school wearing this oversized shirt that said drug-free body, and I was so proud of that. You know, I was genuinely afraid of drugs. I really thought that every single drug was gonna kill me or make me, how like jump out of a window. There's a very, very big difference between psychedelics and things like meth and heroin. So
Oh, yeah,
these
I would
these
imagine.
drugs are not addictive. They're not addictive. Most of them you cannot OD on. Like mushrooms, the more you take, the less they work.
Mm.
So you cannot OD on them. There's so much evidence that shows that they do good things medically. And those are the reasons that a drug is scheduled is they don't have any medical uses, they're addictive, but psychedelics don't fit into any of those things. And in order to be a Schedule 1 drug, they're supposed to fulfill all three things. And they
Oh,
don't fulfill
interesting.
any of them, and yet they're still Schedule 1 drugs. It just makes no sense.
Interesting. I'm learning a lot here today. Learning so much. I'm learning about math and how long a billion seconds is, and I'm learning about drugs. Because yes, you're right. Nancy did
Nancy
put the
Reagan,
fear in
yeah.
us. Yeah, she
Oh,
said
yeah.
just say no, and for the most part, a lot of us did just say
Yeah.
no. We were like, that stuff mess you up, and
Yep.
I've seen personal accounts of, in my own family where drugs really mess people up and
Mhm.
they didn't make it
Uh-huh.
out of that experience. But again, we're not talking about the mushroom stuff here. We're
Right.
not talking about psychedelics. We're talking about the opioids and the things
Yes.
that really
The
start
things that are
messing.
legal, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Oxy, the
Yeah.
FDA approved Oxy, and look what it has done to our society. It's basically created the homeless population. It's insane.
Getting back to your book, when you launched it, what kind of feedback did you get? Were people like, "Yo, Diana, you like? Do you have a target on your back now? Diana, you okay? Like, is everything cool? Are we gonna like read about you on a milk carton? What's been the word?"
So I have excellent trade reviews. So Kirkus is like one of the top reviewers of books, and they gave me their Get It designation, which only I think 20% of books get. And then like Literary Titan awarded me a gold medal. Blue Ink, I got their notable book award. So it is a very good, I know that it is a good book. It is well written, and it's very good. And everyone who reads it is like, wow. When I read the premise, I'm like, how is that all going to fit together? Everyone who's read it has said they couldn't put it down, that they loved it. But then when I try and like post things on social media, you would not
Oh yeah,
believe the hate I get. The people who are defending billionaires is just mind blowing to me. Yeah,
yeah.
so I do get a lot of hate on social media. Yeah.
I bet you do. And how's that been for your ego? Because everybody still has, no matter how much you strip away, it's still there a little bit. And of
Mhm.
course, you can retrain. Okay, that's a great question. Because I just made a statement that needs to be a question. With this, is it more about retraining the ego or stripping it away? I don't know if retraining is even a thing with an ego.
With psychedelics, it's about neuroplasticity. So our thought patterns are ingrained in our brain. So the neurons just keep firing together because when you think about the same thing over and over, the neurons fire together. So you have these pathways in your brain that are very, very difficult to get out of. It's very difficult for you to think in a different way than you've always thought. So these drugs actually, like, your brain functions differently when you're under the influence, and your pathways open up. So you can actually reprogram your brain to think in different ways. That's the whole crux of psychedelics, is retraining your brain.
And that's what makes it so important to have a facilitator, if I'm following along pretty quickly. Because it's not like you just do it on your own and then you're having this experience and you're like, okay, I'm going to start rewiring. It takes an outside influence to help you along. Is that the purpose?
Yeah, kind of. So with psychedelic therapy, you typically have a couple of sessions with the facilitator prior to the day that you're under the influence, so that you can talk about, the things that you hope to work on. And we talk about set and setting. So set is your mindset. So going into the experience, you have to understand certain things about the experience and what might happen. And then the setting is obviously the room that you're in, being comfortable, the music that's playing, the facilitator. And the facilitator's main job is to make you feel safe, so that if you do experience something that is frightening, that they're there to ground you, to bring you back, to sort of move you through the difficult parts, so that you can keep going and go inside. It's all internal. It's not a lot of talking. It's very different than talk therapies. Like for me, with my traumas, and a lot of people who suffer from PTSD, when you are in talk therapy, by talking about your trauma, you're re-traumatizing yourself. Your body feels exactly the same way it did when the trauma initially happened. So talk therapy doesn't necessarily work for PTSD, because every time you talk about it, it makes you feel like you experienced it again. So with the psychedelics, it takes away the fear of looking at your trauma, so that your body is not experiencing it again. And your brain, like I said, it can rewire itself to look at that experience in a completely different way. And then after that day with the therapist, hopefully within a day or two, you meet again, and it's called the integration session. And that is one of the most important aspects. It's when you actually talk about what you experienced, and the facilitator helps you understand all of the things that you learned and how you can sort of use that new knowledge moving forward and change your life.
And I want to sort of couple that, but also back up a little bit to what you talked about early in the conversation about the connection piece.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps with that neuroplasticity, but how does it function to bring that connection to nature, connection to yourself? Some of those things, what's the mechanics there?
Different things. So sometimes visuals. I've had some very, very profound visuals. I actually saw something online this morning that I was like, this is brilliant. It showed how a psychedelic experience can transform what you're seeing in real life into connection. For example, in one of my experiences, I was in a forest with a facilitator, but I could actually see the trees breathing. I could see like everything in the forest, how it was connected to everything else. And I could see myself connected to everything in the forest. It was just like these geometric shapes that everything was created out of. And I was created out of the same geometric shapes as everything else. And it's just a very profound experience. It's very difficult to explain to somebody who's never had it. Like that's stuck in my brain. I think people think that a psychedelic experience is like a dream, that once it's over, you're going to forget it. Like that's not the case. I remember everything from every experience that I've had. As far as connecting to humanity, for me, I remember one experience where I was just looking at my pants, what I was wearing, and I could see like all the threads of my pants. And it just made me think about, well, who made my pants? And how many lives have gone into just what I'm wearing? So that made me expand into everything around me, my entire life, every item that I own, every part of everything in the world, all the lives that have been part of making everything that is part of my life. My life would be different if different people existed.
Hmm. That's amazing, because what I first thought of when you, and I'm by no means a coder or a nerd or anything, like, well, I'm a nerd. Okay, let's get that established right now. There's a support group we meet on Thursdays. But when you describe that experience in the forest and you were talking about the geometric shapes, it just feels like somebody lifted the curtain on like the source code of life
Yes.
a little
Yes,
bit.
that's
And they were
exactly it.
showing you
Yeah.
all the, like the Matrix, you know, when you see all
Yep.
the little things coming down, it was like,
Yeah.
okay, she was reading the source code, and that's the
Yeah.
state she needed to be in to be able to understand it. And
Yes.
that's fantastic. So I'm going to tread on this question delicately because it's not about your book, but like you mentioned maps earlier. If someone's listening to this and they're like, dude, I'm where Diana was back in 2018, and I'm listening to any and every podcast I can to just sort of feel normal, or maybe see if it's me or if it's the world, and they're on their last couple of tries of things. They've done all that. I've talked to so many people who are like, yeah, talk therapy, that's a horrible way to go for if you've got this or that set of circumstances where talk therapy won't touch it, like the PTSD. So if someone is experiencing something that can't be touched by the traditional approved, methods, where's a little place they could look to maybe start down the road of this underground movement for
Yeah,
themselves?
so it's very different in different parts of the states. So
Yeah.
like I said, Seattle, it's pretty open. If you're here,
Okay.
it's fairly easy to find somebody. Oregon, Colorado, they're very progressive. It's quite easy to find somebody there. But as far as the rest of the country, if you are in therapy, like if you are in talk therapy, mention it to your therapist, because a lot of therapists are actually also doing this on the side, but they don't bring it up because they have to know that they can trust you, and that they're not just going to tell everyone, oh yeah, I do psychedelic assisted
Right.
therapy too, and then you're going to the police to rat on them.
Yeah.
So just bring it up with a therapist, bring it up with people, even like, it's really interesting how many people actually know about this and don't talk about it
Mm,
because it is taboo, because
yeah.
it is illegal. So just start talking about it and you'll be amazed. And like for me, when I was looking, I went to a meetup. So it was like the app Meetup. There was a plant medicine group meetup. I'm like, plant medicine, okay, so that's probably mushrooms, So
Yeah.
I went to that and I met people who understand this stuff and are involved, and they know people who know people.
Yeah, you read the meetup and you're like, that's probably not milk thistle they're talking about.
Right.
Chamomile. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
got it. But I want to get back to the book for sure. And right now I'm on Diana Colleen author.com. Is that the best way for people to contact you and get the book, see what you're
You
up
can't.
to?
I don't sell my book directly, but there are some
Okay.
links on my website. Like for I really like to promote indie bookstores. So there are two indie bookstores that carry my book in Seattle. They're on my website. The big names, you can get it anywhere.
Yeah.
So if you do go to an indie bookstore and they don't have it on the shelf, you can ask them to order it.
Okay.
But my website is a great place to connect with me, the author. I have a sign up for my newsletter. If you sign up, I've written a discussion guide for this book, so it's kind of meant for book clubs, but even as an individual, There's a lot of questions in it that will really make you think about what you believe and who you are. It's not your typical book club guide, like, oh, let's talk about this character and that character and what they did in the book. It's really about making you think about the big themes. So there's that. And then, yeah, my email address is listed on my website, and I love to hear from people. Like when I open an email from a reader, I'm like, oh, it makes my day. So I really love to hear from people.
That's fantastic. And I have only one last question. Well, I have two last questions, but one is something I'm curious about. You spent 4 years writing this book, and when you finally held it in your hand, were you excited or were you a little sad that the journey was over?
Neither.
Okay. Okay. The plot
I
thickens.
suffer. Yeah. I really suffer from a discrepancy loop in who I am versus my ideal self. And only when it relates to my intellect. So, like, I'm not an athlete, but I learned how to kiteboard 7 years ago. And it was the most terrifying thing in my life, the hardest thing I've ever learned how to do. And I am so proud of myself for learning how to kiteboard and becoming an independent writer. That is something that I feel pride in. But with the book, because I have built my identity around being smart, I expect myself to do great things. Even though only 0.1% of people ever hold a book that they wrote in their hands, it's not good enough for me because I haven't changed the world. So my horizon moves. Every time I accomplish something with my brain, my horizon moves. As fast as I run towards the horizon, I never get there. That's my mental health challenge at the moment, is trying to figure out how to be proud of this book. I mean, most people would be like, oh my gosh, I won 4 awards for my book. I feel happy for a moment. And then it's like, well, yeah, but I'm not a New York Times bestselling author.
And
So
people
it's
are,
really,
meanwhile, people around you are frustrated as hell. They're like, oh my God, can you just be happy and feel your accomplishment for a minute? I've lived this life. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've had that experience where someone really close to me who cared about me looked at me and was like, can't you just enjoy this for just 5 minutes? Just give yourself 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I guess I could. Okay, sure. I'll sit here and I don't know, write a list about all the things I'm grateful for about this process and how cool I am. Okay, that was fun. Now it's time to get to what's next. And they're like, why are you always thinking about what's next?
Yeah.
Because that's all I've got is what am I going to do next? So
Right.
I
And I
hear
don't
you.
think people talk about this. Like you hear about the imposter syndrome all the time. Everyone talks about imposter syndrome. And this is very different than that. It's almost like it's the opposite thing. Like I know that I belong here. My work is just as good as everyone else's. I do not feel like an imposter, but feeling pride in what I've done, that's a whole different story. And nobody talks about that.
You're right. Because do you think it's at the point where the work becomes more important than the output is when you kind of get into that mode? Because the book is the output and the work, the writing and the exploring themes and the thinking about what got to the book and led up to the book. But then there's all the mechanics of, okay, I put these themes and these thoughts down, but now I have to arrange them in a way that makes sense to other people. And crap, I haven't changed the world yet. Okay, but I still have to write this next paragraph. And I'm not going to change the world if I don't write this paragraph. So let's get into that. And then you got the paragraph written and you're like, looking around and the world's still the same. Okay, it's actually on flames now. So I need to work harder.
Yes. Yeah, I got to write the next book, right? Like, I'm writing the next book right now because, like, well, obviously the first book didn't work.
You guys are creating a self-sustaining situation here. There is no end in sight. Yeah, it's That is true. That's definitely one of those situations that you have to figure out, okay, is this worth changing? Is this something I need to manage? Because for a lot of people, it's really productive.
It
And it's
is,
sort of
yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
productive neuroses kind of things where you wish it'd be a little softer, but you wouldn't be where you were if you didn't have that
Yep.
driving you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a total catch-22. But for me, I suffer from it. I've hired a mental health coach
Gotcha.
because it consumes me every day. It
Mm.
consumes me and it makes me depressed. I know that it's a problem. For a lot of people, it might not be a problem, but for me, it is a problem. So I need to address it.
And that's beautiful illustration of awareness because we talk about that so much on this show. You only have a problem once you're aware of it. Well, I mean, you can have the problem, but you can only start doing something about it once you're aware
Right.
of it. And the fact that
Right.
you are aware that it's not just a cute thing Diana does, you know, she's never happy with what it's an actual thing you're managing. That is a game changer and it actually allows you to do it. So good for you for exploring that and being willing to explore that. And it seems like some of the things that you've done leading up to this book and moving through it have helped you expand your awareness on things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. I am a completely different person than I was 8 years ago. So, like, when people say people don't change, you're full of it. If you don't change, then I think that you're not trying hard enough. Like, people need to change. You cannot be the same person you were. The growth mindset is a real thing. You have to change yourself.
I love that. Is there any, and this is my last question. This is the second of the last questions. Is there anything we haven't really hit or talked about that you think is important for people who are listening, who have heard us talk about billionaires, the environment, psychedelic therapy? And we went in a lot of different directions. They all kind of
Yeah, we did.
smashed together in the middle, and it was awesome. And someone listening right now might be thinking, are they having an actual psychedelic therapy session right now? And while that would be cool, it's not actually the case. So I'm wondering if there's anything a listener might benefit that I haven't even scratched the surface on.
Something that I really like to talk about is hope. I always say hope is the consequence of action. If you are feeling hopeless, you can't wait for hope to come to you in order to do something. You actually have to do something to give yourself hope. And once that wheel starts going, you will be more hopeful every day. Just doing something. So, like, you can see the painting behind me. My friends and I painted that, and I see it every day, and I look at it, and it makes me happy, and it gives me hope. Butterflies give me hope. It's transformation. So, doing anything creative, seeing something that you actually produced, that gives me a feeling of hope that beautiful things still exist. I can produce a beautiful thing. And just a small act like that can change how you behave in the world and how you see the world. So you do have to get off the couch. You do have to stop doom scrolling so that you can have hope for the future. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. A lot of people are very fatalistic, thinking that we're doomed, that we've passed the point of no return. But we don't know who's going to discover something tomorrow that could change everything. So having hope is really important so that you're not giving up, so that you're not just sitting on the couch doing nothing with your life.
I love that. I personally have always had a really strange relationship with the concept of hope because I have, as you mentioned, I've seen it as a passive thing. I've seen it as I wish things would be different. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I just wish things were different. And that's been my mindset. But when, as you explained it, you put some action to it and you have a hope, but you actually have the momentum behind, and it might not even be the momentum behind the thing you're trying to solve, but it's momentum
Right.
behind just take that next step. And even if it's in a little sideways direction, not straight toward the thing you're trying to solve, that's going to build that momentum, like you said. So
Yeah.
thank you for putting it in such a way that can make me feel a little better about the way, because I've always looked at the word hope and I was like, okay, cool, wishful thinking, fairy tales, all that stuff. But when you say, okay, hope is the inspiration and then you have to take the action, that makes it feel a lot better to me. At least this is not about me. So anyone listening, take what Diana said and think about it. Think about it really hard. And I really appreciate you being here today. I got so much out of this conversation, and I hope everyone listening did as well. And I would love to hear what you think about all of this. What do you think about the billionaires? What do you think about the psychedelic therapies? What scares you about all of it? Because there's a lot to process here, and there's a lot to be hopeful for, and there's a lot to be wary of when it comes to all of these things. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. If something in this episode stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Screenshot it and tag me, or DM me on the socials, send smoke signals, whatever works. I want to know what you're plotting. This show isn't just about listening. It's about building something real together. So I hope to hear from you soon, and I'll be right here next week when you're ready to keep the rebellion going.